Welcome to the final episode of this January wishlist series. Today we're going to be talking some Brineblood Marauders. My name's Ryan. I used to be good at Warmachine. Welcome to Spell Rack. Welcome back to another January wishlist episode. Today we are talking Brineblood Marauders with the absolutely beautiful Alex Cosma. Alex, how are you?
You're too kind. I've got the beard covers a lot of the uggo.
But you wear the first event that I actually saw you at, I think you were wearing a jacket and you looked quite snazzy. And so forever in my head, you are a well-dressed Warmachine tournament attendee.
Yeah, I showed up to a tournament in Denver where it was like 95, 97 the entire weekend. I was wearing like a brown leather blazer the whole time. Like, Cosmo, are you crazy? Like, yes, I am.
Yeah. So, Alex, we're going to be talking Brineblood today. Obviously, lock and load with the keynote. They gave us a look into a lot of changes that are going to happen, right? Matt's going down across the board, no spell rack. How are you feeling globally about Brinebloods with what we're looking at for January?
So it's an interesting one for this faction because this faction lives in a really bizarre place in the metagame. In terms of this past year, you've been extensively covering how sort of defensive feats, defensive abilities, and the ability to commit and hold to a position and weather the storm has been sort of one of the decisive metagame characteristics.
Yeah.
Brinebloods is a really bizarre faction because everything that's true about the broader metagame is not true about this faction. The old meme is defense troll, which is a big problem. Your defense value is so low, there's almost no salvaging it.
Yeah.
In addition to that, unlike previous incarnations of trolls, these guys tend to be quite low armor, like so low that also there's no saving that. So competitively, this has been a real counter metagame cycle faction in that it's all offense all the time. Everything that's successful in the faction is oriented around its offensive capabilities, and attempting to lean into its defensive capabilities is a non-starter.
Gotcha.
So this faction has historically paired up incredibly well into some of the top standards that are looking to lean into their defense or armor, against an army that on a ton of warrior models can manufacture MAT 10 to 12 and power like 17 as a matter of course over multiple attacks. So what you're talking about when you're talking about that faction is, even if you shave a point or two off those mat or rat values, when you're in the 10 to 12 territory, it doesn't matter much. Now, what is going to be super impactful for the faction is this faction in its current incarnation really heavily leans on its rack. I always joke that I'm racking the 3 Fs of Brinebloods: Fortune, Fortify, and Fury's Strengths. Those are the 3 outlier best spells in the faction. If universal access is lost to those, it'll change a lot about how the faction plays.
Yeah, that makes sense. The first game you and I ever played together, you told me that you were taking the 3 Fs, and then you explained it to me, and then I've heard you say it many times after that. But you're right, it's a defining point of the faction, and when every list relies on those spells and every list is built around those spells, and now all of a sudden that's gone, it's such a big change.
Right. I don't think it's insurmountable, especially because Steamforged Games have expressed interest in not only reallocating rack spells, but giving unique and characteristic spells to different casters. So depending on how that plays out, and we can talk about this more, the Brinebloods rack is aside from the 3 Fs, kind of dud city. So, I'm expecting some big changes. I think the faction has something like 5 offensive spells, and only 2, but realistically only 1 of these casters can get any of them to go off with any regularity. So we're looking at Black Spot, Powder Keg, Perdition. There's got to be more than that. Their rack is shockingly offensive spell heavy.
But you only have 1 caster with an arc node, so that's what you mean. It's not offensive power spells, it's just offensive spells, and then you have 1 arc node caster.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a tricky thing. I guess if we're coming on to casters,
Sure.
another top level observation with this faction has a long shadows problem, and not the rule that's on like Baronova. It's a two of these casters have, disproportionately long shadows. That's Admiral Boomhowler and Captain Shadowtongue. So if we're looking at the caster roster, Boomhowler is essentially better than Foulblood and Boggity Bomb at basically everything they do.
Okay.
She has superior battle plans. She has comparable defensive mechanics. She can rack more spells than Boggity Bomb. She's more personally dangerous. And, one of the big touchstones is in her current incarnation, she sort of overshadows Foulblood because they're both running an infantry-centric plan, but Boomhowler supports the king better and therefore runs essentially a better army.
Okay.
Likewise, Shadowtongue essentially completely eclipses Captain Firequill. In the metagame, as it is right now, there's no list archetype you can put together for Firequill that wouldn't be improved by straight up swapping the caster for Shadowtongue.
Yeah, okay.
Broggan Ragemonger is the only one who sort of carves out his own niche. I know it's a bit weird that I'm not a fan of him. He is sort of most people's top metagame picks.
Yeah.
Things he does well is, at least in his current incarnation, cover Duskwell with shooting and run the fundamental proposition, what if I just have a bunch of mid-powered attacks that literally can't miss less than defense 16?
Right. Yeah, that feat is so scary. Okay. So, so it sounds like you have a lot of casters that need to be buffed. So let me just start with Boomhowler. Do you think she needs to come down at all, or are we just talking about buffs for other casters?
So the big question for Boomhowler is where Fury's strength and other comparable damage buffs, sort of shake out. Right now, she's very, very dependent on that spell to materialize damage consistently outside of a king on other models. Storm Rager is an awesome spell. Avenging Force is remarkably good, and there's sort of been a shadow archetype for Boomhowler, which is big battle group Boomhowler. So theoretically, if you manufacture the ability to land perditions, she can actually run the Shadowtongue big battle group plan significantly better.
Okay.
I think solving the long shadows problem is going to involve some aspect of reallocation of strategies away from Boomhowler. And frankly, I would actually quite enjoy seeing big battle group Boomhowler come in.
Okay.
One of the things that's attendant on the mat drops is a base defense of 12. Well, it's not great on warrior models. Does certainly stocks definitely rise a lot on heavies, and if you have the ability to give them defense 14 and rapid healing along with good base armor and HP values, you might be talking about a potentially really strong caster. So I don't know how on theme it is for her, but if we were to start to solve the long shadows problem, I think that's a real viable niche we could look at putting her into.
Well, and then it gives some of your other warcasters space, like Foulblood, right? You said she's always just strictly better than Foulblood, and both of them want to run infantry. So if Boomhowler leans more into battle group, and that gives Foulblood a place to be made better and be one of your better infantry casters, and then they're not stepping on each other's toes.
Right, and Foulblood's carrying native Fortify, so if the 3 Fs don't get carved up in Boomhowler's direction, he might be your go-to.
Yeah. Okay, so she actually sounds maybe a little turned towards the battle group, but otherwise she seems like she's pretty fair.
If I had to offer my wish list, I would say, you want to distinguish the casters meaningfully. That's the best direction to pivot her. Because honestly, out of all the casters, literally all the casters in this faction, she has the broadest array of play to her. And Big Battle Group Boomhowler is very impressive. It's just not her best avenue right now. So that's why you never see it.
Makes sense. Okay, how about Ragemonger? So we know that his feat is pretty powerful. The games I've played against him seems like a very good caster. Feels like one we could kind of leave alone, but what do you think?
I'm right there with you. He's lived in some odd places because some aspects of his kit natively favor Big Battle Group. So Tantrum, Unyielding, etc.
Yep.
Unfortunately for Broggen, the steamroller pivot into the modern paradigm of 40s, 50s, flags, caches, etc., really did him no favors. If we were to flash back to like 2023 and prior, circles and rectangles, this guy loved that paradigm.
Okay.
It's just not favorable to him. And sort of that's where you've seen Broggen, combined arms, infantry, ranged heavy really come to the fore. In his current state, honestly, I think you don't have to touch him much. You know, the big question mark for this guy is spell rack slots 3. If the rack is going away, this guy has a lot of opportunity to shift direction.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this guy shoot stuff off the table like crazy with that feat. And, you know, I think, is he your best gunline caster right now?
I think so, yes. That feat is just massively supportive and saying, even if you're hugging cover, like, it doesn't matter that much is a big deal.
Okay, so Firequill needs a lot of help.
Firequill needs help desperately. I mean, if you've been in the game long enough, you've seen casters like this flail to find good design space. You know, just to say quickly, shoot harder casters are one of the hardest niches to balance in this game, if not outright impossible, because if they're good, their shooting is so powerful it nullifies the importance of positioning, which means game over. Your game no longer exists. If he doesn't shoot hard enough, then positioning is strong enough to nullify his shooting, which means this caster doesn't exist. Another complicating factor for Firequill, I think a lot of the problems really start in his feat and his spell list. So let's scroll down to that. So Heavy Rain, we have an across the board hit and damage buff to ranged attacks that also provides some ancillary benefits. And then we have Broadsides. What you're looking at with a caster like this is most factions like, yeah, I'm going to run my big bad main guns and this is going to be killer. And then you start to look at the Warbeast spread in Brinebloods and realize not a single beast outside of the Colossal has what we would call a main gun. A gun with good enough range and power values to be a real game winner or a consistent turn-over turn threat downrange without being in turn in your opponent's threat range.
Gotcha.
Firequill really languishes under the constraints of his faction. Given that as a limitation, Broadsides is an awful spell for him to have. This is essentially like my Colossal gets to shoot one more time and I get to shoot one more time for half my stack.
Yeah. So is his best fix is your war beasts need better guns, right? Or their gun options need to be improved? Is that the right way to tackle
Honestly, I think, you know, because Steamforged has inherited a bit of a pathway lock with how the war beasts are physically sculpted.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that it's very difficult to change those things. I think, honestly, the best move for this caster is actually a design space pivot.
Okay.
So we have had, like, quote-unquote shooting casters whose primary shtick is their personal gun presence and then their support package, but their support package is not necessarily leaning into shoot harder. It's leaning into shoot different or an alternate shtick.
Yeah.
Gareth 2 is a very prominent example where he's got this big, powerful armor-piercing shot. He's got mortality, but everything that he does is either in, like, the scoot and mobility territory or in the territory of making your army, like, slippery or like a porcupine ball to deal with. So he presents you with control challenges. That's great design space.
Yep.
Somebody like various iterations of Kane will often look like broad army-wide supports and also just very good personal ability to excise casualties at range.
Yeah.
For Firequill, I would love to see him go in the broad support / shoot different category. It's not working in this faction. Bullet Dodger, I think a great change for him is actually moved to Surefoot. Bullet Dodger being single target focused is like, do you want it to live on this guy? Like, his defensive stats aren't this good. If it's Surefoot and he can be the, oh yeah, by the way, this Marauder crew really gets amped up and hard to kill.
Yeah.
That's quite nice. I would love to see his feet get some slightly different work. And then the shoot harder is cool, but like, I don't know, just personal opinion, this ain't the direction for it.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's fair. Okay. So yeah, he needs, like you said, he needs a redesign. Shadow Tongue is solid. Does he need any changes?
So one of the things I can't imagine Perdition is going to come down to this guy from the rack.
Not with Gallows also.
No.
I pull
In
you and I
wait,
push me and I go forever.
yeah. Wait, in many common Shadow Tongue builds, Perdition is essentially glued to his card because of his ability to consistently deliver it.
Yep.
This is a caster that may also potentially suffer from losing Fortune.
Okay.
Um, you're always going to have Madame Moriarty with Shadow Tongue, which means like Fortune is an easy thing to say yes to. If nothing else, you just put it on him and he gets
Yeah.
to reroll attack rolls. So
Yeah.
he's probably going to lose some of those tricks. Honestly, I feel like this, if you recognize this caster isn't going to have Perdition or is not likely going to have Perdition,
Yeah.
I don't think he needs that much touching. Like,
Okay.
honestly, fill out those 2 spell slots with Dealer's Choice. Something like Black Spot could be cool, but not strictly necessary.
Sure.
I would love Fortune on him, but it maybe makes for some skewed assassination runs. He's just in such a healthy spot. If he is likely to lose Perdition, does push him to his next best build, probably just canonically being king-centric.
You guys seem like a very balanced faction, right? And maybe slightly above 50%, but nothing too much. So I like the light touches that you're kind of talking about because it kind of feels like it keeps everybody in line. But you definitely have some stuff that needs to be brought up that needs more help.
Right.
So how about Foul
But
Blood?
for the most part, as much as there is a long shadows problem, it's partially a function of the rack. And the casters in this faction actually don't have that much wrong with them other than too much consolidated design space because
Okay.
the rack enforces a certain level of homogeneity.
That makes sense.
So Foul Blood is an odd duck. One of the reasons he lives in Boomhowler's shadow offensively, also it's worth remembering defense troll is awful, armor 13 is awful, even with 5 boxes. There's also a ton of anti-healing in the game. The 2 companies that have been designing Mark IV love to print grievous wounds, love to print mortality, love to print entropic force, etc., etc. So it's a tough time to be tough. And pursuant to that, open bar, giving all your models stumbling drunk, in conjunction with bad defensive stats, this battle plan is almost a non-entity in terms of its defensive utility.
Yeah.
Foul Blood looks like he has these cool battle plans, and in practice, battle plan precision strike on Boomhowler is straight up better than all 3 of these.
Sure.
Is not to say that like some armies won't be, in a lot of trouble dealing with a stumbling drunk army. They certainly will. But he has a lot of abilities that are just not as impactful as you would want. And he's just a guy with a melee stick. Like, he doesn't even have a hand cannon to offer.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. He's not doing anything else before he engages.
And just one more note on his battle plan. A change I would love to see. Let's go into his feat rum and grape shot. So let's read the wording here. Friendly warrior models. So mind you, this does not affect your battle group. Right. Friendly warrior models with stumbling drunk. Models that natively have stumbling drunk are Foul Blood and Tapper units. That's it. So this feat does literally nothing unless you call open bar. Friendly warrior models with stumbling drunk gain +3 armor. When a friendly model is pushed as a result of stumbling drunk, you can choose the direction pushed. Rum and grape shot lasts for 1 round. So I would love to see this feat just say friendly models gain stumbling drunk in Foul Blood's control area. Just being battle plan contingent, it also means the AoE of this feat is not 14 inches, it's 10. It's his battle plan radius. And I think it's just a real design mistake that his feat doing anything is contingent on him calling a specific battle plan that turn.
Yeah, that's pretty limiting.
It's another Rack 3 caster.
Yeah.
Honestly, he seems like a great home for a damage buff because it's really, aside from threat ranges, and that's, something we'll come to with our next caster pick, kind of all he's missing. Blur actually gets a lot better with a lethality drop.
Yeah.
+3 def against ranged attacks. If we're talking, that becomes effectively a +4, we're in the territory of this actually being something that mitigates defense troll.
Yeah.
And then Fortify is always good. It's easy to assume that he's probably just the faction home for this spell. So a lot comes down to what the remainder of his spell list gets filled with. Personally, I don't think this guy makes it if he doesn't get a damage buff. If he does not get a warrior-based damage buff, this caster is unplayable.
He needs some help on the feet. He needs a proper damage buff because the rest of the kit is not as exciting. Say his name again.
War Chief Boggity Bomb.
Boggity Bomb. All right, that's a big word.
It's a terrible word. I try to avoid saying it and just refer to him as War Chief. So this guy lives in the shadow of Boomhowler for a very different reason. As it lives right now, what this guy does, he can armor buff a unit, he can cast a fire spell, and he can fire step himself. And then what else is he bringing? Conditional, very good defensive feat, and personal damage out.
Okay.
The problem for War Chief is Boomhowler between Fury Strength and Storm Rager is significantly more dangerous than this guy in melee. So there's actually a design niche that's totally unfilled in Brineblood's right now, which is being the generalized threat range guy.
Okay.
This guy has Attuned Spirit, which free animus, very nice. Bunch of personal threat rules. Field Marshal Fuel for the Flames is the biggest so what.
Okay.
You would think that's great for all these fire type attacks that we don't have. It's like Fire Quill syndrome. Like, this looks great in a vacuum until you actually catalog what's in your roster, and then it's not so great.
Okay.
And what I would love to see for this guy, it's very elegant to give him his own unique design niche that gets him out of long shadows and fix that problem, is replace Field Marshal Fuel for the Flames with Blazing Path from Callus 2. So for those who don't know, Blazing Path is, among other things, models in your control area just get +2 speed when charging an enemy model suffering fire.
Okay, that's cool.
So in one fell swoop, you reorient this guy from sort of Mr. Generico with strong melee personal damage as a primary element to he's the go fast guy. He incentivizes you to take what little fire attacks you have, but they're not for damage purposes. They're for enabling purposes.
I like that.
I feel like that's, just a single sweep you can do to totally change the fortunes of this caster. And then his personal danger threat, goes into the backseat and becomes a backup shtick, which is actually a great thing for a caster to have. Primary plan, go fast. Backstop, I'm going to beat some models up.
Yeah, because then he's speed 8 if he's charging something that's on fire, and then he can actually do some damage. Also, having a decent go fast with a defensive feat is kind of nice, right? Because you can try to get the alpha, try to protect your army as best you can, and then, see what lives.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and you're looking at bosun units threading 14, and you're looking at dire trolls threading, I think, upwards of 12 inches, maybe more, depending on what other offensive technology you have available. I think it's a great spot for the caster.
Gotcha.
And Spirit Realm being confined to only Bullcroak models. So the most egregious this gets, obviously it affects the caster himself. It'll affect the Vroggers. That's the most egregious thing in there.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I never realized, because I've never actually seen anybody take him. I knew about the Incorporeal. I guess I didn't realize it's only the Bullcroak cadre.
Yeah.
Warbeast. You've mentioned the king quite a bit. He seems one of your sort of anchor pieces. Does he need any touch-ups, or is he pretty solid?
One thing to maybe touch up on this model is the lack of the loss of the 3Fs being universally available. This model is maybe a bit too squishy without ubiquitous access to Fortify.
Yeah.
So I would love to see survivability increases come in for this guy. Honestly, most of the things on this model are really, really good.
Yeah.
I enjoy most aspects of it. I would say if there are changes to make, it's to the least used systems. So first off, the Electro Lure Head. Same cost as a Bulbous Chomper. The problem is Awe is not nearly as good a rule as Paralyzing Gaze. Again, when you're dealing with Defense Troll, this being limited to living models, it being such a small bubble, it's just kind of a nothing rule. I would love to see Awe be replaced with something else that's a little more meaningful.
Okay.
Because right now this head realistically only gets played in armies where you want your Colossal to have a 4th gun. If you don't need the 4th gun, there's no reason to play it. Paralyzing Gaze is just straight up better.
That makes sense. Yeah,
next system that doesn't get used is the Seahorse versus Triton. Cost 7. Get Counterblast, get +1 rat.
Right.
Or by comparison, get Unyielding, get Plasma Nimbus just for free, and get +1 speed for 1
Yeah.
point less. Honestly, the King feels really good at speed 6. He feels really good with Unyielding. I forget Plasma Nimbus more than I remember it.
Sure.
I would love to see that Seahorse figurehead be, made more than vestigial and have it be a real choice for this model.
Yeah, I mean, like, as I look at the two of them, in all honesty, like, if I compare the two, this feels like it should be like 4 points to 6, not
Yeah.
7.
Yeah.
Like,
if you're not going to juice it
remarkably
up, it
worse.
should cost almost nothing.
Right. But obviously, you're right. The better change here is to, the rat and the counterblast is probably fine, but give it an ability that does something. Or
Yeah,
I was gonna say
and
an extra
honestly,
range
I
shot
feel
or
like
something.
rotating Plasma Nimbus between the two doesn't even solve it.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, because +1 speed means a lot in this game. Rat, I feel like you're probably normally going to be boosting your shots.
Yeah.
Rat 4 to Rat 5. I mean, they're both bad.
Ubiquitous Loss of Fortune is going to touch this guy a lot. It
Yeah.
will have big impact on his reliability. The last one is the Powder Cask.
Yeah.
Honestly, this doesn't get picked because the main gun is just cheaper. The main gun does the job perfectly adequately.
Yeah.
The Powder Cask has some neat bonuses, but you don't necessarily want to pay more points for it, especially in the faction of premium low-cost solos. If you turn one or both tentacles into Powder Casks, you're forgoing something pretty substantial in the rest of the army.
Yeah, and the ability to just be a gun platform for a turn before you start engaging stuff is worth a lot in this game, right? It's a difference. He doesn't have to be your front piece, and you're able to leave him back for a turn. The other thing is that main gun, getting a couple of those, is the reason why Ragemonger's so frightening, right? I mean, it turns
Sure.
Ragemonger on like crazy because you start hitting those crit knockdowns and you got some good assassination runs, or you're killing heavies, and
right.
or
under Shadow Tongue. Imagine living in terror of a speed 6 model with range 14 guns that ignores forests, clouds, and models for line of sight. Like, you're never safe.
It's astonishing to me that you would pay a point to lose 4 inches of range. I almost don't care what the gun does at that point, right? To pay a point to lose 4 inches of range, just terrible. And then you look at it and they're the same POW. Okay, you give up the AoE, but
it would maybe be more rationalizable if they were the same cost, because AoE 3 with POW 10 Blast is quite sizable.
Yeah.
Especially in a faction that has pretty good access to buffs for that.
Yeah, and the King is already he's not the cheapest Colossal out there at 28, but he's got a pretty tight band from 28 to 31. So you probably want to see Powder Cask. Like, you don't really want to put it down to 5 points because then you get a 26-point King. Maybe that works. But maybe just if it was range 12, it would be so much better. And 6 points.
Absolutely. No, I think at range 12, it becomes very competitive.
Yeah. So, okay. But I know he's a good model and, he sees a lot of play. Okay. Chum, are you a fan of him?
Actually, I'm gonna cover all 3 of the large lads in sort of one go.
Okay.
Chum, Deepborn Dire Troll, Great Old One. These are all models that feel like really dialed into me.
Okay.
Deepborn Dire Troll, I think you can do some monkeying around with his various systems, maybe bring some outliers up and or down. But this model feels in a great place. Obviously, it doesn't have main guns, but it's just a really solid all-rounder, or can be purpose-built into dedicated roles at a reasonable price point, always doing reasonable or better damage. Honestly, have no notes for this. Chum is a dedicated specialist. He's all melee all the time, but he's also a nice survivability tank. He does have counterplay in that Stumbling Drunk is a fantastic defensive option, but, you can also fire pop guns at him and watch him walk away and be sad. Warhead is amazing.
I love that
base
ability.
Power is fantastic.
Yeah.
And Great Old One is if Chum is a specialist, Great Old One is a generalist.
Okay.
He's very tough to kill, especially at range with no support, no fury demand from him
Oh god, he
personally.
has
I think,
carapace
yeah,
at
yeah,
armor
yeah, you
20.
can't shoot this guy down. And he's a
Oh man.
movable object.
Yeah.
As opposed
Okay.
to Chum, who's the supremely movable object. Yeah, this guy is once again, like, Chum's a specialist. This guy's a generalist. He does
Okay.
everything. I think maybe the one thing he could stand to have is a 2-inch melee weapon, particularly
Sure.
on that big claw.
Yeah.
Just because the standard Deepborn Dire Troll can outperform him in that aspect at cost. But like all three of these guys, I actually feel really confident about their place now and about their place over the next year.
Okay. Makes sense. What is a reef troll? I've never seen a reef troll before.
That's a good question. What is the Reef Troll? Too expensive.
Okay.
Also, the faction's only source of shield guard.
Okay.
So that comes off of the Matey head, which is also the cheapest. Gives shield guard, pretty good rule for 0 points, versus the gunner head, which gives +1 rat, and I don't even remember. Swift Hunter, who's going to use that on light guns? Like, it's nonsense. And then we got Skipper, which I think is +1 mat, and who cares? Once again, it's a big so what. So, this guy is shield guard. The problem is it's a light that you don't want to have to field unless you're absolutely required to.
Okay.
The animi, we're looking at sprint, unyielding, and far strike.
Yep. Okay.
None of these are need to haves aside from maybe far strike on Firequill. Kind of nobody cares about this, so he's not an animus bot.
Yeah. Okay.
And then we look at his systems, and he's kind of like standard light trap territory with POWs ranging from like 11 to 13.
Mm-hmm.
This guy needs a role. He needs to be an animus bot, or he needs to have really banger systems.
Okay.
I feel like, honestly, the closest he gets right now is the Harpoon, just because it offers the most options. And even then, it's not that impressive.
Right now. Not when you're skewering medium-based models.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I would love to see Shield Guard go to another option in the catalog and not be stuck to this guy.
Okay.
I think that would be more opportunity for role finding for him.
I'll be honest, right? As we were going through this list and I'm just walking down in order, I really didn't know he existed. I've never seen one. I've never heard mention of one. I didn't know you had a light war beast. I mean, it makes sense that you do. So it sounds like he needs
the Reef Troll is a legal fiction. Don't worry about it too much.
So I can imagine, right? The summary there is his top end probably needs to be 10 points, not 12. And then he probably needs a couple of POW on a lot of his different weapons, right? To make him a little bit more useful. Yeah, okay. The Vrager's a pretty legit piece, though.
The Vrager is an amazing piece. The number of times this year I've been told, like, man, this model needs like 2 less rules. And I look at people, I'm like, this model only has 5 rules. He doesn't have that many.
They're just all very good.
Yeah, everything is good here. This War Beast is on the fragile side, but kind of in a fair way. Yeah. Like 13, 15 impervious flesh is like, there are certain attack types that just run this guy over. Like Rangers run him over, a dedicated heavy coming into him runs him over, but he'll flummox you under the right circumstances. Paralyzing Gaze is an amazing support ability, really adds a lot of offense and a lot of cycle burning because Brineblood's lacking those like main gun options, doesn't really apply a ton of pressure outside of melee. The Virager is a wonderful complementary piece. I think maybe if I had to identify an area where this model's a little too good, I would say it's his base melee POW. He's only Fury 3, but he's POW 17 and has the ability to self-buff to POW 19.
Yeah.
This guy's damage with or without Flaming Fist is maybe the one rule out of his 5 that pushes him a little too high.
Gotcha.
So that could afford to come down, or I think he could go up to cost 13.
Him being defense 13, that always surprises me too. And his stats seem so bad, but it's that paralyzing gaze that works on everything. It makes him mat 7, and depending on how far you are away, he's rat 7 too. I mean, his range is only 3 inches past the gaze. Yeah, no, he's pretty legit. So yeah, maybe if the claws came down to 16, I can't
Mhm.
imagine his mat or rat going down in the new
No,
meta.
where else can they go?
Yeah, no, I
They're
don't think.
already fives.
Yeah, and so yeah, in the new meta, I think you're right because his mat and rat probably don't go down. Yeah, you've probably got to touch his pals a little bit. Okay.
Yeah. I will say I wasn't even necessarily thinking of where the meta is going.
Mm,
It does emphasize that this model probably needs to move down somewhere because his defense 13 is only going to appreciate.
yeah.
And it means things like Mat 7 heavies coming into him are going to go from dunking on him to like, we got a problem here,
Yeah, it
boss.
starts to get dicey. Well, because they've said mats come down, right? So if Chum goes
Mhm.
to 7, if the Deepborn goes to 6, if the Great Old One goes to 7, and the Vrogger stays, that's a buff by comparison, right? If everything
Yep.
else goes down one mat and he stays, maybe you do just make him 13 points. I'd be okay
Yep.
with that. I wouldn't argue. He's such a cool model. But solos, what do you want to talk about in
Solos.
here?
Okay, so let's cover the stuff that I think is in a good spot.
Okay.
Booty Boss is in a good spot. Personally, I hate the set defense battle plan, but that's potentially going to appreciate. So
Yep.
I'm willing to give it a wait and see. Sneak and Stir the Blood are super useful. Incidental Hand Cannon is nice.
Yeah.
Uh, at cost 2, I have no problems with this guy.
Yeah.
I don't
Great.
think there's anything to add or improve. First Mate Hargor Stormjaw, we're going to go a little out of order. First Mate Hargor Stormjaw, likewise in a great place. That native defense 14 with Riposte is only going to appreciate. I wouldn't be surprised to see his Matter Rat come down,
Okay.
but he's also a flare bot, which is quite neat.
Okay.
Veteran leader also means like, the meta game changes to Mat and Rat. Maybe once again don't affect, like, even if you remove the hit aspect from gang or something like that. Brinebloods I think is pretty well positioned to remain the hyper offense faction, and that's something you got to watch for.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
this
makes
guy, I don't see any need to change him. I think he's in a great place for the faction.
He's also got 2 Mat 8, expecting to be Mat 7. Out 13 Weapon Master attacks with the cause fire. He's awesome. Okay, I like him.
Yeah. Let's see. Fugue Walker is another no notes model for me.
Okay.
Fugue Walker is a ton of fun. I guess maybe this guy could stand to shave a point in cost, but he's got a great suite of abilities. High speed, decent defensive stats, can self-buff his defensive stats, decent offense, like sort of nothing lacking. This is just a model that's intermittently hard to squeeze in because Brineblood's really is pressed with like, they're rotten with options in the solo spot. So he can often wind up in a hard spot.
Well, I would imagine you'd take Stormjaw first over him over most places. Obviously, Stormjaw's being a character. So if you're then looking for a second 4-point solo that can beat some stuff up, then you take him, but you'd have another option first.
So no notes models, Mr. Boggs, honestly, like he's fine.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with him. I think his biggest problem is that he's just fighting in Brineblood's solo space. He may appreciate, actually, if solos become more scenario relevant in the future, because like many pygmies, he's actually leaning into his defensive characteristics a fair amount with a good enough offense.
Yeah, the Iron Sentinel is pretty solid. So you're putting him up to defense 16.
Mm-hmm.
That seems pretty legit.
Yeah. Yeah, and then good enough offenses.
Yeah.
No notes on this guy. I'm not a giant fan, but I don't think there's anything wrong with him. Magabaza is a model that I think there's a ton wrong with, but honestly, I can't tell you how to change her. She's such a bizarre dumpster fire. Sometimes she's game defining, and often she does nothing.
Okay.
Like ancillary attack and enliven sound like great abilities.
Yeah.
They look great on paper, and they typically do a lot less than you would hope for.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah,
like, honestly, I don't know how to change her. She's such a glorious mess.
That she's even like Cav. What a weird model.
Yeah, Cav with repo too, and an admonisher melee weapon that's like weirdly high pow for a support model.
Yeah, I almost want to say like give her 5 hit points and make her three cost, but
sure.
It is an interesting, because at 4 points, like the sort of conditional suite just feels too conditional, right? You're like,
Right. Yeah.
maybe this works, maybe it doesn't. And for 4 points, it's too much of a gamble. At three
Yeah.
points, it feels worth the gamble. She probably comes down to, maybe she loses a mat or an attack statistic or something like that. Make it a little
Yeah.
cheaper.
Yeah. I've actually that is the big one. I think she could probably stand to take an outsized stat impact somewhere and come
Yeah.
down in cost. Because
Yeah,
you're
that
right.
makes
The
sense.
the speculation would feel right. Let's see. Pig Cannon Crew. These are fielded far less than I would expect otherwise. Like, this model doesn't have a ton going on, but what it has going on is nuts.
Range 14, PAL 14. Some is at Rat 6 is legit. It
And
is.
mind you, you're in the faction where that could just be matter like Rat 10 as a matter of course.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I
Um,
think about compared to like my snipers in Dusk, right? I'm range 14, PAL 12. I have significant utility amongst my shots, right?
mhm.
But momentum I would put up against all of the shot types. Momentum is insane. The difference is I'm speed 6, you're only speed 4, but repo 3 while being speed 4 is actually really good. So that still
Mhm.
allows you to like kind of duck out from something and then come back. 50 millimeter base is also really interesting. Okay.
Yeah, this is a model that's like it's hard to say there's wish list changes for it because what it has on offer is amazing.
Yeah.
It's just like the sample size on it is so small.
Yeah.
And I would love to see like if the rest of the faction, gets like poo-poo rained on it from a great height, like I'm gonna experiment with some quad cannon armies just to find gold.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh god, yeah, and they're FA4. Ugh. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're cool.
Sully's another no notes. Pig
Yep.
Dirge, no notes. I have seen people get rightly frustrated with these guys being tough, no knockdown, or specifically the Dirge, so maybe that
Yeah.
could change. Surgeon, I feel, is in a great place as is. I think
Okay.
the one note I would offer is the constant printing of anti-healing abilities. First off, I'll say this model is criminally underplayed right now. Because
Okay.
Troll's defensive stats are so poor,
Yep.
literally the best defensive option you have in the faction is recursion. Any of defensive support you try, it's not worth points. You're bringing Gregor Boomhowler for Force Barrier, straight up cut him for 2 Surgeons. 2 Surgeons will provide you more models over the course of the game. Grim
Okay.
Returns is amazing. With the amount of anti-healing that's out there, I would love to see a reword of Shark Bait so it wasn't contingent on taking a tough check. Because somebody comes at you with anatomical precision or grievous wounds, and you're like, guess I get no shark bait, which is pretty common. I've been like racking my brain since you proposed doing this wish list, and I honestly can't think of a wording that makes it work right.
Yeah, but the idea is on disabled, you would move and make it.
You're in this trap with tough, both keying on disabled.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. But still a good model otherwise.
Well, the surgeon is fantastic. Like,
Yeah.
I would love to see a revision there, but like, people have not been fielding the surgeon. Field the surgeon. He's models we didn't cover. Pig Battle Brig. I mostly like this model. I will say the biggest thing for him, he might be a casualty of the range come down. For instance, his grape shot attack type on the swivel guns being spray 10, I
Yeah.
think is maybe something Steamforged had in mind when they were looking at a range tamp down.
Yeah.
I could see main gun probably taking a hit. The biggest change I would like to see for this guy is actually for him to lose rules.
Okay.
Skyladder went from, like warrior model when this model moves. And in the old propelled days, you would go a full advance 0 inches, skyhook this bosun crew guy 2 inches forward, and then reposition 12.
Okay.
That no longer works. And Skyladder is now only solos.
Yep.
For all their virtues, Brinebloods has no interest, basically, in threat extending their solos.
Okay.
This rule is almost totally vestigial. I would love to see that get cut and for this guy to just come down in cost.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's an inconsequential rule of a past age.
Yeah, I mean, especially if he's going to be a victim of a range 10 heavy cannon potentially and a, range 8 spray or something like that. Cut
Yeah.
Skyladder, make him 9 points.
Also, This is also a model where, when I was talking about I'd love to see Boggity Bomb pick up Blazing Path, I
Yeah.
was thinking of this model. Because you think, oh, how do I get fire onto their models? Pig Battle Brig, like, loses Sky Ladder, comes down to 9 points, with an incendiary shot that lights you on fire, hit or miss, at a walk 7, shoot 8.
Yeah.
You can play fairly aggressively with your expensive model, but you know what? You have a way to make your speed extender happen.
Yeah. And that's a very good point, right? Because even if you miss, it says model hit, not directly hit. So that's wonderful. Okay.
Last model, actually, there is one solo we didn't cover here, and it's the Fire Guardian.
Yeah.
When I deploy these guys, I refer to them as my liabilities.
Yeah.
Because there's so many rules in this game that key off of killing an enemy model or charging an enemy model. And you get to set these guys once and hope it's right, and it probably isn't. Their most impactful ability is I can contest. Also, and I give magic weapons, because nothing in this faction has magic weapons.
Yeah, the magic weapons is very important. At
Yeah.
a point, that part makes sense, but
Yeah. Cursed comes up every now and again, but honestly, I would love to see these models pick up some suite of rules that enable them to not have to be contesters that you're constantly fretting about, and just lean more into a support kit of abilities that gives you a different rubric for thinking about the one time you get to place them than, is Cursed going to matter? No. Well, do I place for magic weapons and contesting? So I'd love to see them shift niches, especially given how many offensive spells Brinebloods has to roll out, and how many offensive spells don't really have a good home. I would honestly love to see these guys become like maybe channelers or some kind of caster assist.
channel would be cool. Or what's the ability where you get plus 5 inches of range? Like if you were within
range amplifier, yeah.
Yeah, like if you were basing this model, or if you were within 2 inches of this model. I was just thinking your spell rack's going to be gone, so it's not like like if this gave range amplifier, it's not like every caster's going to have perdition now, right? So you're not going to be able to use it across the board. But the caster that does get perdition, or the caster that does get black spot, it helps you cast those. And then you're leaning into, you're giving magical weapons and magic amplification, and that kind of makes sense.
Right. And Brinebloods just has a bevy of really awesome offensive spells. And like the fact of the matter is, only Shadow Tongue or Bragan can realistically cast them.
Right.
So I would love to see help for whoever winds up being inheritors of these really cool offensive spells get a way to play with them.
All right. Units.
Oh God, we're starting with the hard one first. I hate fire spitters in their current incarnation. There's so much wrong with the design of this unit. One, large unit prey for something like this is kind of a non-starter.
Okay.
Shield wall at single wound with no tough and only base arm 14 is kind of a non-starter.
Yeah.
Honestly, the best defensive rules these guys have are prowl and amphibious. That's as good as it gets. They have multiple attacks, but their POWs are all sort of in the wrong territory, like 10s, 12s, 10s. This is just a unit that's so deeply confused, and I think there's an intention to be looping into fire synergies, but like POW 10, POW 12 with prey, like even if Fuel for the Flames were to like switch to extra die, nobody cares. That's still not good enough.
Yeah. They almost seem like they should just not have prey and be 6 points.
Yeah. Honestly, carrying on from the Reef Troll discussion, I would love to see these guys like ditch prey, ditch shield wall, and maybe pick up like girded and shield guard. Rules like girded, given how weirdly low armor these trolls are, girded would go a long way for survivability in the faction. I think just having some on-demand shield guard in the faction, even you keep them at like 8-7, I think that would put this unit in a great supporting place where they're mixed in with your Marauder crew and your other models, and they're just keeping them safe up the board.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I like shield guard. You want to do your character unit?
Lockabash Brothers? Boy, this is an odd unit. The place Brinebloods has been in this year is like, if you're looking at fielding infantry, you're usually looking at fielding them in force.
Yep.
So that'll mean Marauder crew in numbers. The way the buffs are distributed in the faction right now means more Marauder crew is usually better than other options.
Okay.
Lockabash Brothers, though, weirdly are the perfect unit for anybody who doesn't like to take units.
Okay.
Like you still need some to play for scenario, but you're like, ooh, Marauder crew, I can't do much with like one of them.
Yeah.
Put in Lockabash Brothers. They do the job. They're more durable. They have better attack output under certain circumstances. Whoever winds up being the inheritor of Black Spot, these guys play hilariously effective with Black Spot.
Oh my
If
God.
they
I
get to
didn't
be
even think
Rat
about
8,
that.
yeah, and they like shoot you, Black Spot into those guys, take that Black Spot attack, snap fire back into the Black Spot unit, Black Spot attack somewhere else. So they can shoot wherever. They hit decently hard enough, even with like no caster support. You throw a booty boss in, and these guys hit at POW 18.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The Lockabash Brothers, I think, are going to be in a really good spot. Their defense 13 is only going to appreciate, honestly. For and if we get some caster diversification, it's possible that, like, say we see the age of big battle group Boomhowler, she might love these guys.
Yeah. They look like they could clear a lot of chaff.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to doing a lot of damage if buffed properly, right? You're still trolls. You still take buffs really, really well.
Right.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and these guys, because their defensive stats are just that one better, they can actually receive buffs incredibly well.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense.
Marauder crew is a hard one to talk about. The lethality drop is probably going to be affecting these. It's going to have to affect these guys a lot. The problem is there are so many other things that are staples in the faction where it's like, you could drop these guys to mat 3 and they might still kick ass.
Yeah.
So I think it's almost more productive to talk about their attachments.
Okay.
Because essentially it's going to be dependent on that. So the quartermaster of these is the one I have the most wish list for. Being the most expensive, this guy is kind of the orphan of the bunch. Like, extended fire is awesome, powder store is awesome, but the difference between a quartermaster and a tapper is the one turn where you blow the mini feats, the quartermaster unit is better. Yeah. Every other turn, the tapper unit is better. Okay. I found I've just dropped these guys completely. I would love to see the quartermaster's cost come down into line and maybe lose one of those mini feats for just a more persistent benefit that differentiates the unit from being a worse version of a bosun or tapper, less all other turns of the game.
Gotcha. Okay.
Bosun and tapper, otherwise, like, I wouldn't be terrifically surprised to see the offensive capabilities of the bosun come down. When I throw Storm Rager and Fury's Strength and Stir the Blood on this gal, and she hits so my charge attack is mat 13, POW 21, and they're like, I'm sorry, you what?
It's an attachment to a 6-point unit.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see her offenses drop a little bit.
Okay.
But her suite of abilities and her effects, I think, are really good.
Yeah.
You just from the current design, I feel like the bosun and the tapper are really well dialed in, and each one gives the Marauder crew a distinct niche that's metagame viable and is going to continue to be metagame viable. I think just evening out the cost and the impact curve of the quartermaster is going to make a big difference.
Okay, that makes sense. What about your other, really, we've got pygmies left and spirit shamans.
Yep. Pygmy boarding party is part of the reason why fire spitters are a dumpster fire.
Okay.
Fire spitters have a lot of their rules and a lot of their points to effects focused on their offense, but their offense is a big so what. Boarding party is essentially all defensive capability. These guys are one of the best ambush units because they just gum your opponent up so bad.
Yeah.
Between annoyance, tough, and reciprocate, especially with a lethality drop down, I wouldn't be surprised to see them lose at least one of these defensive rules. Okay. And even if they lose one, they're still going to give your opponent heart palpitations. Why would you field an 8-point unit over these 6-point guys that are just going to I've had Colossals have to divert to clear these guys because they're disrupting scenario that badly.
I did an episode on ambush and about how the rule really doesn't affect the game that much. And the only time that I've ever actually seen ambush used is on this unit.
Mhm.
And so I think your point of them being solid with ambush is very well taken. The annoyance on them is true to form.
Yeah. Well, in the current paradigm, you're right. Ambush as anything other than a gum up tactic is
Yeah.
kind of a non-starter right now.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Currently, all the utility of ambush right now is in your defensive capabilities. Pig Boarding Party of all the ambush units have the best defensive capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So they're in the current paradigm, the one unit that you see exploit that rule well, and
Yeah.
maybe a little too well right now.
Yeah. Fair. All right. What about the galley crew?
The galley crew has a bunch of cool rules that often don't come up.
Okay.
They have combined ranged attack. They have combined melee attack. Those are very bizarre things for them to have when they're like Mat 5 POW 10s or range 4 knockdown. I feel like these guys are
I feel like they're silly
they're
for the
3
sake of being
points.
silly.
They're 3 points that you'll spend all the time and you won't necessarily feel good about, but you won't feel bad about it either.
Okay.
Because the current scenario packet puts such an emphasis on units, getting 3 bodies for 3 points is pretty good. They're often your follow-up wave, and they'll just stand places.
Yeah.
Condition's almost a non-ability.
Yep.
Especially in a lot of Brineblood's heavy-based paradigms where your heavies are sort of disposable rockets. Condition almost only matters in standoff situations. That means ranged beasts. Most Brineblood's beasts don't have good ranged weapons.
Right.
So that essentially means these guys offset your king, and that's about their only support contribution.
Yeah. Okay.
So maybe cost drop, maybe buffs somewhere. They would actually be surprisingly good offensively if those stupid nets went to range 6 and they kept CRA. Yeah, I feel like they either need a personal stat buff or a cost drop. One of those two brings them about to the right spot.
Okay. And then Pig Shockers.
This is one of the coolest units you will never field right now because nobody supports them effectively.
Okay.
Honestly, I think perhaps a defense bump for these guys, and they're in a great spot.
Okay.
Full-on disruption on range 10 guns with Electro Leap. Like, if these guys hit the right target profile, they can go bananas.
Yeah.
You know, with the crab net on the Dire Troll being as good as it is, with the Abyssal King sporting as many crit knockdowns as it does, these guys can really mess up somebody's plan. You know, maybe some slight survivability or offensive tweaks, and I think these guys are really dialed in.
Okay. And then Spirit Shamans.
Spirit Shamans. These guys feel great.
Okay.
I love this unit as is. I would be saddened to watch them take a mat hit because, like, have you ever played against Creelstone in old Trolls and, like, it's coming right down to the wire? Every member of the support staff is getting involved in the fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Creelstone warps plus damage. The caster throws a damage buff and a mat buff on it. It's like, wait, these guys are hitting how hard now?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I remember the
Spirit
days.
Shamans with their Mat 6 POW 14 Blessed bring a little bit of that flavor, and I would hate to see it go. I feel like it's got to, but man, are they fun.
That's a random POW 14.
Yeah. No, yeah, and then these guys get Stir the Blood and Fury Strength, like, watch out.
Yeah, oh my god. Blessed, Fire, Magic. That is a good weapon, range 2.
Yeah.
Oh god, that's so funny. Yeah, forget the magic abilities. They're just a melee unit. Okay.
Yeah. They're a fun little bag of surprises. Like, they have mage static. Like, some armies, like some Spirit Shamans, can ruin their day. I think also, you know, with offensive power being brought down in other places, this is another unit that's units in Brinebloods means Marauder Crew. If Marauder Crew get brought into line, or if more casters are less super supportive of them, that means an opportunity for models like Shockers and Spirit Shamans and Lockabash Brothers, and depending on where they land, Fire Spitters, to come out of their shadow. Honestly, like at the top of this show, the caster rebalance affects so much of this faction. Not that the casters are bad,
Yeah.
but that they're all kind of one-dimensional. And if we see some nuance and changing of dimensionality, like, again, there's units here where, like, maybe nothing's necessarily wrong with them. They just need the right opportunity.
Well, and they're just, yeah, they're right now they're overshadowed by the Marauder crew.
Mhm,
And when you
mhm.
bring them all online, yeah, they'll have an opportunity to shine a little bit more.
Oh.
All right. Any kind of summary thoughts? I know we did this in the beginning, but anything to wrap it up?
I really front loaded this with the problem that the rack presents, that the long shadows of the two best casters in this faction presents.
Yeah.
As we go through the catalog, I feel like that becomes increasingly apparent. My wish for Brinebloods is not necessarily that they get more powerful or less powerful. This faction is not going to stop being the hyper offense faction and living
Right.
in a very unique metagame place. What I would love to see is for it to get diversified and
Yeah.
for different elements to really come into their own. So that's the major takeaway here, I think, for me, for your audience, and hopefully for Steamforged games.
All right. Well, perfect. Alex, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you for having me on, Ryan. This
All
was a
right.
ton of fun.